Hi, my name is Steve, and I'll be the host of today's Hangout. Joining us again for our 11th Google Hangout is Charlie Seyffer, an air filtration expert with Camfil USA, the global leader in clean air solutions. And today we're going to talk about air quality and the special needs of museums, which should be an interesting topic. Most people don't think about how the air there is as important as it is at schools and other places. Charlie, how have you been?
Very good. How you doing, Steve?
Pretty good, pretty good. Nice weather finally, and actually getting some good outside air.
Don't
Anyway,
count on it.
yeah.
On ozone and stuff. I guess we'll talk a little bit about that today. So,
Okay. So, Charlie, why are museums such a concern with regard to air quality and specifically with regard to pollution?
well, it's interesting. If you think about our museums, the most important thing that we can do in there is we're preserving history, so we don't have to relive it again. I was watching the Discovery Channel the other night, and they had this wonderful show on about these two big ships that were built 3,000 years ago, and they were perfectly preserved because they were underwater. And they brought them up, and they put them into these special buildings and to protect them and so on, so people could see the technology that was used 4,000 years ago. And unfortunately, the boats were destroyed during World War II. So it was extremely interesting to learn the histories that these people had and so on. And we need to keep things from past civilizations alive. Little things like, Navajo artifacts that may have come from the 1700s and so on. All those things are important to us. Unfortunately, pollution is one form that nature has of breaking down components so the earth can renew itself. It's a natural process. If you think about it, when you walk in the woods and so on, what happens to the trees that fall down? Over a period of time, they disappear. It's just nature's way of cleaning up.
And so, what's the biggest contaminant of concern then for museums?
Well, the biggest problem is almost the same one that's the biggest problem for human beings, and that's ozone. Ozone is an oxidant, and it's nature's strongest cleaner. It breaks down things like textile, your clothing, paintings, artifacts, even metals will oxidize under the strength of ozone. Basically, what happens with O3 is it actually breaks down to oxygen over a period of time. So in the end, it becomes something beneficial. But when it's in that bad state of O3, it's dangerous. It's formed primarily through human interaction, unfortunately, typically from automobile exhaust, industry. When those things are combined with UV light, they have a tendency to create ozone or O3. Ozone will turn your lungs to leather. The real bottom line is it's bad for everyone. It's bad for people with respiratory distress in particular, but it's also very bad for museums. There's 108 million people that live in areas as defined by the EPA that have concerns on a daily basis with relation to ozone. Usually those are urban environments, and if you think about it, most of the time our museums, where are they located? They're located in urban environments, so they're susceptible to high levels of ozone.
You know, you mentioned O3 and ozone. So is ozone an oxidizer, much like bleach in a sense, as it converts to the good O2 oxygen? Is that what's hurting our artifacts?
Absolutely. In fact, ozone is actually a very good cleaner. In certain cases, it can be used to clean the air because it only exists for a period of time, and then it will break down and go over to O2. The only problem is when you have ozone, it will break down everything in its path. So when you're using ozone as a cleaner, you don't want human habitants within that area where you are cleaning. It's so strong that in a lot of cases it's used in buildings where there have been fires and so on to remove the odors. And I've even seen it where it was used in a Cadillac to get rid of the residual of a cigarette smoker that had smoked in the car for like 9 years. They put an ozone generator in there, and overnight when you came back, you couldn't even tell that there was a smoker in a car. So it's a very, very strong oxidant. But if it does that to the residual of cigarette smoke in the car, you can imagine what it's doing to your lungs or to the artifacts in a museum.
Right, as delicate as they are. So what can be done to protect museum displays and artifacts and all these antiquities that we really need to keep preserved?
Well, actually, it's very easy. In fact, it's done in most of the significant museums around the country. All you really use is carbon. Carbon is kind of a black magic where people don't understand how it works. But basically what carbon does, it absorbs the ozone onto the surface of the carbon. Now, it kind of acts like a sponge. Now, when you're talking about gaseous contaminants, you're talking about molecules that are measured in something called an angstrom. An angstrom is 1/10,000,000th of a meter. So
Right.
gaseous contaminants are very small. The human nose can actually smell things down to the range of 10 microns and so. So the human nose is also amazing. But basically, these molecules in this angstrom size, they actually absorb on the surface of carbon. And 1 cup of carbon can have over 5 miles of surface area. So it can absorb a lot of gas contaminants, a lot of odors, and so on. And it can also last a very long time. It's not unusual for carbon to last up to 4 years in even casino environments. In museum environments, typically they test it periodically to make sure that it's at a good level of removing the ozone so they don't lose their most valuable possessions from within the museum. In fact, another interesting point is that when the King Tut display moved around the country, in order for that display to be displayed within your local museum, you had to show proof that you had a carbon system in your museum, and you also had to show proof that it was operational at the time, or that display could not be used in your locality.
Wow. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about Camfil's carbon filter type products? Because I don't know much about that. And how does the carbon and the air filtration work together? How is that accomplished?
Well, there's all sorts of different designs. The original carbon that's used in HVAC systems was actually designed for submarines back in the 1950s because we actually created ozone with one process and then had to remove it downstream in another process. But basically, you take granular carbon, sometimes up to 120 pounds of carbon per module, and then you install it in the HVAC system. Now, I'm kind of bringing that back to a level that I want to break down because there are other types. There are even pleated panels that have carbon installed on them, 2-inch pleated panels. But for the most part, the ones that will work properly for a long period of time are at least in a 12-inch box. They can be pleat-in-pleat, V-pleat, impregnated media, all the way to the granular carbon that I talked about earlier. Carbon's even used to remove nuclear contaminants that are a problem from nuclear waste facilities. So it's really the black magic, and of course the most valuable use of it is in museums.
Incredible. Well, where can our listeners find out additional information about carbon filters and Camfil and preserving museum quality artifacts and what have you? Where can we learn more?
Well, like everything else, I mean, most of the information is available on the web. You can look at multiple sites, either camfil.us or camfil.com or catalog.camfil.us, and just look under carbon products, and you'll find quite a bit to look through there. Keeping in mind that there's all sorts of different designs designed for different types of applications.
Yeah, then it would probably make sense to take a look, and then if that's of interest or need, contacting a Camfil rep to find out which product really makes the most sense, since it's not just a one-size-fits-all. So,
absolutely, Steve, and there's even a list of contacts right on any of those web pages, right up on the right, and just click and look for your locality and find your local rep.
Excellent. Hey, thank you all for participating. We look forward to seeing you at our next Hangout when we cover some more essential air filtration topics. Thanks, Charlie. That was really interesting.
Thank you, Steve. You have a good day.
You too. Be well.